Welcome back, brothers and sisters of Christ. My name is Brianna, and I'm back with another video. And for today's video is plant that seed. Don't be scared to plant that seed. You know, as we know, a huge part of our job as followers of Christ is to spread the gospel. And when you're spreading the gospel, you're planting seeds, whether people are believers or not. You know, that can be family, friends, strangers, co-workers. But as we know, spreading the gospel is not always easy or accepted. Now, sometimes even when we plant that seed, it doesn't mean that person will change right away or even believe right away. But you can be the first person to plant that seed. And even if they come across another person who shares the gospel with them, because of you planting that seed the first time, the second person that planted the seed to them again, you know, they may become curious, even if they weren't before. You know, you planting the seed the first time could make someone curious. But even if they wasn't before, if they hear it again, they may become curious. You know, because they may wonder like, you know, this is the second person that has shared this with me. Maybe I should, you know, see what's to this. Maybe I should look into this. Maybe I should go to church. You know, we literally don't know what happens when we plant these seeds. Because I know in my personal life, although I was always a believer, there's certain things that stood out to me and certain things that stuck with me. You know, for an example, as I mentioned before, there was a lady who invited me to church about 4 years ago and I didn't go. And I always, like, every now and then I would think about that and I would feel bad. You know, it stuck with me. I was invited to Bible study back in 2023 from my godparents. And ever since then, I have been in Bible study. And me staying in that Bible study played a huge role in part of me getting serious on my journey. You know, I've learned a lot. So someone... you know, also sharing the gospel and planting seed doesn't always have to be you telling people about God or telling people about the Bible. But like the things I mentioned, you know, inviting somebody to church and inviting someone to a Bible study is a form of planting a seed. Because like I said, that helped me on my journey. That helped me get started. Like, okay, I was invited to Bible study. Now I'm going every Wednesday. You know what I mean? So we literally don't know what happens, and it's not our job to even know what happens. When we plant these seeds, we don't have to stick around to even see what happens or know what happens, but you just need to do your part as a follower of Christ and sharing the gospel and planting seeds. You know, you may share something that they never heard before or something that they needed to hear. Your story may be relatable to theirs. You can say anything that could literally grab their attention and make them want to know more, make them become curious. But the things I have noticed about when you do plant seeds is that sometimes people will get mad at you. You know, like I mentioned before, it's not always easy or accepted spreading the gospel. So, you know, sometimes people will get mad at you. They don't want to hear what you have to say. But another thing about that I've noticed, when people get mad or don't want to hear what you have to say, that honestly, I've noticed 9 times out of 10, that means that you're on the right path. That means that you have planted that seed, because 9 times out of 10, that person begins to feel convicted. That's why a lot of people do not want to hear the gospel. I understand some people have like trauma and past things that may be something, a reason why they want to hear gospel. But a lot of times people become convicted. So they become defensive, you know, and although it's not your job to personally convict someone, and that's not the goal when we are spreading the gospel, you know, but when you notice someone has become convicted, or defensive, depending, you know, what the argument is, what their, you know, their stance is, you may have got to that person. Because I've actually have experienced this. You know, me and my fiance have experienced this. We talk to people about the gospel, and people are not always accepting towards it. People say negative things, but you know, my fiance have told me stories of people that would say negative things when he would try to, you know, spread the gospel or say something about God or the Bible. And then he said those same people will come back to him asking questions, or they like, I read the Bible, you know, or, you know, what about so and so, you know, they become interested. So when you plant those seeds, although people may not accept it right away, you may not even see them accept it, they may not come back to you, but down the line, like I said, we don't know what happens when we plant these seeds. And it's so important. You can literally be the reason that somebody goes on their journey. You can literally be the reason somebody gives their life to Christ by planting one seed. Oh my goodness, it's so important. And another reason it's like so important for us as followers of Christ to know our stuff. You know, although, you know, we ain't gonna know everything, but we need to know enough to the point where when somebody asks us, we're able to give an answer. We need to be ready all the time, because people will come back, you know, if they want to argue back and forth, or if they're just curious, they're going to ask you things. They're going to come back and ask you things. But even if you don't have the answer, you know, be like, you know, we can open the Bible right now. We can find that. You know, we can figure it out together. We can learn together. But planting seeds is so important, and I've literally seen it work and help and move in people's lives. And that's our job, y'all. That is our job. Do not be scared to plant that seed. You know, ask God to give you that confidence, that boldness to spread the gospel. In any form, way, or shape, because he honestly, you know, sometimes God will put us in uncomfortable situations, but sometimes he will, you know, put it to where it's something that we would in a comfortable situation. Like, okay, I understand, like, you're not going to go out and do street preaching, but I'm going to have it to where you're spreading the gospel to your coworkers. You know what I mean? But we just got to pray about that, because that is our duty as Christians, to plant these seeds and spread the gospel. So whatever way God wants you to do it, you know, just pray that he gives you the confidence and boldness to do it. But we know that he will. If he's telling you to do it, best believe he's going to back you up and with everything you need. But if this word is not for you, it's for somebody else. Remember, I'm telling y'all this because I love y'all. God bless.